Good evening. I hope you can all hear me. In fact, looks like you can. And we're going to talk about a few matters today, especially concerning American politics. I hope that sometime either today or this week, I'll talk about possibility of further bloodshed in Ukraine and Eastern Europe. And of course, if you want to put a question in the chat, or otherwise send me something. You can either subscribe to this channel on BitChute, Rumble, or Odyssey, or get on my Telegram channel, which is really a good way to be in touch as the country seems to be in a very difficult position. Of course, I hope that you and your families are doing well, given this tough economy. Um, Now, before I really get into the national politics, there is something that I think is showing that big tech is starting to really, lose its moorings. Okay, because YouTube has decided that it is going to get rid of the dislike count on all of its videos. So for those of you that are watching on YouTube, obviously there's still, as of right now, there is still a like button and a dislike button. So I always urge people to press the like button, but there have been many videos. I wouldn't even say, just a handful where, yeah, I've been ratioed and gotten dislikes, and I don't really care. It's fine if people want to come on this channel, even if it's just as a hater, and say, yeah, your videos are garbage, whether it is for a valid or invalid reason. I don't really have a problem with it. I think the case that gave me the most dislikes was when I started to criticize Nick Fuentes, and all of his fans came on, or not all of his fans, but people who are basically Nick Fuentes fanboys came on the channel and disliked it, which is, it's a very common thing where people are so partisan towards their YouTube heroes that they'll go to a channel. I'm not a very large channel, and they'll dislike your video simply because you're criticizing a guy. Even if it's for, I think in that case I gave him some mild criticism given the things that he said. I've always defended his right to say what he wants to say, and I defend the right of his fans to come on to this channel and put whatever ridiculous comments they want, and to dislike the videos and otherwise hate on the channel, because that's the YouTube that I believe in. That's the country I believe in. But unfortunately, we're not living in a reality anymore where you can just, have an opinion and, let people really know who you are. So Um, that's why I keep telling people, okay? I know that some of you have habitually come here for many years. Live streaming is still easier on YouTube. I have not been able to figure out how to do it on Odyssey, even though, I've fulfilled all the conditions for it. It just, on a technical level, it isn't working. But I do urge you to migrate over to those platforms, BitChute, Odyssey, and Rumble, and instead follow me there, because there's no growth potential on YouTube. For many years, and I remember specifically after 2018, or even, you know what? I think this started in 2017. They started to tell people, if you get more likes on your video, it helps you with the algorithm. That's never been true for me. There were many videos that I did that had at least, a decent amount of likes at the time, and it wouldn't really help the views. And generally, what YouTube has been doing for all these years has been shadow banning, meaning that it doesn't matter whether the viewer likes the video or doesn't like the video. And of course, there's always going to be the debate over how many YouTube users are actually active and how many are bots and whatever. But rather than try to resolve all those issues and really make it a platform where it's real viewers and users who are determining its destiny, YouTube is deciding to cut them out of the process, cut the creator out and cut the viewer out. And I think that that shows really where the priorities of big tech are. It's not about giving the viewer what they desire in terms of entertainment or in terms of information. It's in order to curate that for the people who can most benefit YouTube and Google Alphabet at large. So that's my take on that. I hope that you guys are in agreement, but if you're not, that's fine. You can still continue to watch on YouTube for the time being, and I'm gonna just re-upload this later on BitChute, Rumble, and Odyssey. Um, so this is an article that I saw last night. By the way, I did try to restream to stream this video last night, and it just wasn't working. I tried to record a video, it didn't really come out with the energy that I needed, and I didn't upload it. So we're gonna read a little bit from this article where Jonathan Chait, who is notable as one of the dumbest people I think in print media, print or online written media, he says maybe we should have listened to Larry Summers' warnings about inflation. He doesn't think Build Back Better will make it worse. So these are people in the media, and I think if Larry Summers has said what he is claiming that Larry Summers said, then I think you can you can disregard him as well. Um, they're saying that, well, Larry Summers was right that the American Rescue Plan would lead to higher inflation, but we shouldn't take that as an indicator that the Build Back Better plan would lead to the same thing. Meaning that, look, I guess you're right, the spending did cause all of this runaway inflation, but you know what? That's fine because we have all this other stuff that we need to do through the Build Back Better plan, and we have to keep on, keep on message and keep doing what we were going to do, regardless of the consequences. By the way, please vote in the poll if you haven't voted yet. The question is, where will President Biden's aggregate polling be by Christmas? So aggregate polling I usually use the Real Clear Politics aggregate. I know that there are other aggregates. I think 538 does one. So the one I mean is the Real Clear Politics, but it has been sinking. But because there have always been polls that have been more shallow, then it doesn't really sink very fast. So bear that in mind. It's not as cut and dry of an answer. I happen to think that the real approval for President Biden that is much less than the polling companies are giving him, because I think that they're oversampling Democrats. So here, Jonathan Chait says, it brings me no pleasure to report this, but Larry Summers may have been right. So he comes already from the standpoint that it's harmful to my agenda as a so-called journalist that a major economic advisor, Larry Summers being the former advisor to Clinton and Obama, and I think Treasury Secretary, apparently for both of them. So this person was trying to. So Jonathan Chait is a far leftist, and he wants the laws of economics basically to be suspended in order for him to make a political point, and that's just not the way reality works. So Summers was right, and he's taking, he's not happy about it. So Larry Summers, the former Clinton Obama administration Treasury Secretary, was telling everybody who had listened at the beginning of the year that the economy faced a much higher risk of inflation than either the Federal Reserve or the Biden administration believed. Summers, in particular, warned that the American Rescue Plan, a $1.9 trillion emergency fiscal measure, would pump too much demand into the market economy too fast and risk overheating. Did I agree with this warning by Summers at the time? No, I didn't. I thought there was a chance Summers was right, but I thought the risk of a too slow recovery with too high unemployment outweighed the risk of excessive inflation. That calculation may prove correct in the end if inflation peters out over the next year and the recovery chugs along. But any honest person has to concede that the balance of risks between growth and inflation looks very different now than it did in January. Now is the winter of his discontent made glorious summers. There are two conclusions to be drawn from this episode, one immediate and one broader. I'm fairly confident none of the relevant parties will draw the correct lessons, but I'm going to say what they are anyway. First, even if we take as a certainty that the American Rescue Plan was too inflationary, and uncertainty is too strong a view, it does not follow that Build Back Better is inflationary. So he's saying, just because we spent a ton of money that we don't have for the American Rescue Plan, doesn't mean that if we do and cause inflation, doesn't mean that if we do the same thing for a different piece of legislation that does the exact same thing, doesn't mean that there's going to be inflation. So there's a person who he plays wishful thinking out loud in New York Magazine. The American Rescue Plan was a deliberate effort to stimulate demand by injecting $1.9 trillion that would be spent quickly. None of it was paid for. That was by design. Offsetting the spending with tax increases would cancel out the stimulative effect. Build Back Better spends slightly less money over a much longer period of time, and nearly all the spending would be offset by tax increases or other fiscal savings like reduced spending on prescription drugs. So, one thing that he leaves out here that people, I think, are unaware of, most people at least, is that the Biden administration is about to reinstate the SALT tax deduction. And what that is a massive deduction that property owners are able to take, where if you pay high rent property tax in a state like, usually like a state like New York or New Jersey, you can deduct that from your federal taxes. Effectively, that becomes a big tax cut for major property owners. And it's something that I think if you're a progressive, right, if you're one of these people like Jimmy Dore or Glenn Greenwald or I don't know, Crystal Ball, you would have a problem with, because you're giving a lot of money back to people who are in many cases billionaires, and in other cases millionaires, right? uh, so so this is something that they're leaving out of it. They're leaving out of these articles that this is what the Build Back Better plan would do. Build Back Better spends slightly less money. I think we read that. Jason Furman, one of the few liberal economists who largely agreed with Summers on inflation, has been saying for months that Build Back Better will not worsen inflation. So he says, your regular reminder, the reconciliation bill would have essentially no discernible effect on the medium or long-term path of inflation. That legislation should be evaluated on other criteria like what it does for opportunity, climate change, and long-term growth. Senator Joe Manchin has repeatedly cited inflation as his main concern about Build Back Better. Inflation is a good reason Manchin should have insisted on cutting back more deeply on the American Rescue Plan. It would be truly perverse if Manchin voted for an inflationary bill and then used inflation as a pretext to block a non-inflationary bill. So this is where you can see that um, he he's basically trying to say, hey, your fears about inflation, which you didn't express about the American Rescue Plan, you shouldn't express those fears now about the Build Back Better plan, because that would make you a hypocrite. When in reality, this isn't about hypocrisy or not hypocrisy. It does mean that Manchin was wrong before, because he voted for the American Rescue Plan, which was a big mistake on his part. But that doesn't mean that he should just throw caution to the wind and say, "Oh, I was wrong about this, so I should also be wrong about the next issue, just in order to remain consistent." So that's basically where his argument is. So Jake keeps going, and he, sorry, my dog is here. Uh, Ziggy, come here, come, Ziggy. Ziggy, you want to talk about inflation? Anyways, I don't know if you guys can see him. Oh, my video isn't even Here, 1 second. Ziggy, hey buddy, hey. Yeah, he wants attention. So anyway, so the Build Back Better plan supposedly is not going to be inflationary, right? It's not going to be inflationary simply because Jonathan Chait is saying that Joe Manchin was wrong to vote for the American Rescue Plan. Therefore, he should also be wrong about the Build Back Better plan because magically it's not going to be inflationary simply because Jonathan Chait wants to own Joe Manchin. That's the way this logic works. Believe it or not, he doesn't really have much besides that in his quiver. Um, and then he goes on to talk some shit about um, Larry Summers and how much of a dick he is or something. Um, so moving on, we're going to talk a little bit about approval ratings and what it really means for the Biden agenda. Okay, in my opinion, based on the way that the polling has moved, the Biden agenda is on life support and probably not gonna. It's not gonna go very far over the next few months. It could be dead permanently, and the reason for that is you are seeing this movement apparently. So I think that this page updated. So it was literally at 42.0% approval when I pulled it up earlier. Let me see what it is. Okay, so and it's been readjusted to 42.1%. So yeah, it actually went down lower today and then it came up a tiny bit. But Biden is now at negative 10.5%. So he has double digit disapproval rate lead in the polling. And you can see that this is a topic that I've already talked about in a previous video. But it's something that I think we have to look at in perspective about how polling affects the public mood. Okay? If you're a Republican and a Trump supporter, public opinion polling might actually be something that you let roll off your back. Because, and this is something that is implicitly understood by most people who read the landscape of politics, generally the Trump camp, the Trump voters, have been distrustful of the media the entire past 5 or 6 years because they see stories that are reported about Trump that they find to be defamatory. In some cases, those stories end up not being true. Cue the talk about the Steele dossier today, by the way, in unrelated news. So not even with the Steele dossier, but a different Trump legal matter. Um, Trump's former accuser, Summer Zervos, I think her name is. So she had her suit dismissed in court, where she accused Donald Trump of sexually harassing her. Um, yeah, so she ended her lawsuit. So the former apprentice contestant accused Trump of sexually assaulting her in 2007. Um, so Summer Zervos, a former contestant on The Apprentice who accused Donald Trump of sexually assaulting her on Friday, ended her nearly 5-year-old defamation suit against the former U.S. president. The abrupt decision to discontinue the lawsuit without an apology or compensation from Trump spares the former president from being questioned under oath about Zervos' accusations that he subjected her to unwanted kissing and groping in 2007. Zervos had sued Trump in January 2017 in a New York State court in Manhattan, saying he harmed her reputation by calling such allegations by women lies and retweeting a post calling her claims a hoax. Trump also denied Zervos' assault claims, calling them politically motivated. Zervos had appeared on Trump's reality television show in 2005, Ms. Zervos no longer wishes to litigate against the defendant and has secured the right to speak freely about her experience. Her lawyers, Beth Wilkinson and Myra Penza, said in a joint statement. Ms. Zervos stands by the allegations in her complaint. Trump, a Republican, had been seeking court permission to countersue Zervos for interfering with his right to speak freely, a right he said was guaranteed by New York law. So here, this is the real crux of the argument, which is that Trump was threatening to countersue, and she couldn't have defended that lawsuit. She would have probably either run out of money or simply lost. Zervos' lawyers called that effort an attempt to escape a court-ordered December 23rd deadline to be deposed. Ms. Zervos made the prudent decision to voluntarily drop her case without the exchange of any compensation or attorney's fees, Trump's lawyer Alina Habba said in an email. She had no choice but to do as the facts unearthed in this matter made it abundantly clear that our client did nothing wrong. Wilkinson and Penza did not immediately respond to a request for additional comment. The case remained unresolved in part because Trump sought while in the White House to halt a variety of legal proceedings by arguing that a sitting president could not be sued. Now, this is an area where I actually disagree with Trump. There have been court rulings at the highest level, mainly brought about during the Clinton era, ironically, where it found that the president can be sued. So whatever you want to say about Trump and whether he's innocent or not, I think you can sue the president. Now, does that mean that I think every lawsuit against President Trump has merit? Absolutely not. And I don't know what was the merit of this suit because it never went anywhere and it never will, apparently. I believe that, I'm not sure if it's written in this article, but um, this this suit was actually dismissed with prejudice. Um, and then there's the E. Jean Carroll lawsuit, which occurred under similar circumstances. Carroll, I think, accused him of groping her in the 80s. So we'll see what happens with that. It's kind of a curiosity since Trump is no longer president. By the way, so those of you that are probably going to be asking, in the next few years, what do I think about Trump running for president again? I think he could run for president again. I don't know if he'll run the whole way. I think he might start a campaign and then drop out at a certain point. And why am I saying this? First of all, I think somebody at Trump's age, they start to think a little bit more about um, ways to pass the torch, and running a campaign and then withdrawing and endorsing a second person could be a way to do that. It's just my personal gut feeling, but yeah, he could run again. And he ran one time and won. There's no reason to think he can't win a second time. But it's a little improbable. There's only been one president who served two non-consecutive terms, Grover Cleveland, and there's a reason it doesn't really happen. It's because it's financially it's very difficult. But in his case, there's many things that happened that were unprecedented before him. So don't take this as a hard prediction. It's just a personal gut feeling. So that's regarding that lawsuit. Now back to the polling for Joe Biden. My opinion is that um, you are going to see further decline in his polling. Okay, now my answer to the poll, okay, I see that let me see here, there's 50%, so it's me and one other person are saying that it's going to be at the 35 to 39% level. Another person is saying it's going to be higher. It's going to be in the range that it is now, 40 to 45%. And then one person selected 35% or less. So I don't know if it'll get down to 35% or less by Christmas, but you are going to see the trend, I think, continue to go down to such a degree that it's going to be hard for him to stay at 40% or above. And one of the reasons I think that his polling is continuing to slide is that when you have real economic suffering, when you have real people who are basically seeing their own livelihood become more difficult day in day out. In fact, in my family, it's very much like that. It's unfortunate that so many Americans have to start to realize that we had it good for a long time, and it's about to get pretty rough. Um, that's something that I think will generally affect his polling more and more. And why is it going to affect his polling as opposed to the Trump polling? That's what I was getting into. That's how we got into the whole Summer of Zervos issue. The reason is that a lot of Biden voters, a lot of the people who pulled the lever for him in 2020, and I'm aware that there is controversy over the election itself, but a lot of those people have always been believers in the mainstream media. So when they see polls from ABC and the Washington Post, like the one that shows him uh, with a 19-point hole in polling, he has 57% disapproval, 38% approval. When they see, even, I mean, he's at negative polling in Reuters, but Reuters took a poll of all adults. Not the greatest way to take a poll. Likely voters is actually a very important way. Susquehanna, um, so he's down 16% in that one. And the one that really got a lot of attention is USA Today, where he had 21% gap in polling. So whatever the reason that they're publishing these and whatever the reason that his polling is doing so poorly, um, Biden's voters they're more likely to believe opinion polling than are Trump supporters or people who are disaffected from the system, people who are independents. And when they see this momentum shifting against them, and there's really no positive, um, there's no positive indicator to hold on to, right? He's been terrible at foreign policy. You even have Biden jeopardizing the U.S. relationship with, of all countries, France. When you have basically his defense policy looking like a huge wreck because you have so many soldiers and airmen and sailors who are unwilling to get vaccinated because they want to assert their constitutional right of conscience, and yet Biden is offering them no wiggle room. So there are people who know um, somebody in the military, and they see the difficult places where Biden has put them, whether it is in terms of very hazardous missions like the one in Afghanistan where 13 of our Marines and I think it was a sailor as well, or no, it was a Marine, 12 Marines and a soldier. So they lost their lives in this disastrous pullout from Afghanistan that is actually, it feels like almost a year ago. It was only 2 months ago, 3 months ago. Yeah, it was 3 months ago that we pulled out of Afghanistan. Um, so people are seeing this disastrous approach to foreign policy, disastrous approach to defense, and then compounding all those indignities that they see is an ongoing crisis of a bad economy, a bad jobs market, and also bad energy policy, where you have people seeing that they have to pay more for gas, they have to pay more for heating, they have to pay more for all the other energy related costs in their lives. Those are things that I think are going to continue to drag his polling numbers down, and even you're going to see, I think, some core Democrats, people who are severely partisan for Joe Biden, begin to defect and abandon him because when you actually feel the results of the policies that you voted for, how long can you continue to live the lie? Not everyone is capable of doing it. I will say that there are people who are willing to do it. There are people, we see it in the era of COVID most of all, who they don't care what the consequences are. They're for lockdowns. They're for mandatory vaccinations, even though at this point it looks like the vaccine mandate could be struck down by the courts. The Fifth Circuit has effectively ruled against it. Uh, Not just a stay. I think they ruled literally that it's unconstitutional. Um, I was looking for some more detailed information about the ruling, but I haven't found it yet. Um, so, and then beyond that, there's also people who are willing to take any vaccine that the government says is safe, whether or not that it has a long track record or not. So yes, there are people who will walk with Biden off the cliff like lemmings, but it's an increasingly small sample of the population. Um, Other stories that are going on at the moment: Senator Patrick Leahy, who I mean, he's in his 80s, so this isn't exactly unexpected or hard to understand, but he's retiring. So the question is, what would happen? Who would replace him? Now, there is not really. Vermont is no longer a swing state. It was a swing state, I think, up until the mid 2000s when it really started to slant to the left. It has one Republican governor, and then in every other respect, it's become largely a far left state. I think earlier today I tried to post a story about this, asking on Gab. I tried to ask Sticks Hexenhammer 666 to run for senator in Vermont. I don't think he can because he's not living in the U.S. right now. He's living in Holland. But I thought it was still worth it as a joke to talk about it, to propose that a YouTuber run for Senate. Um, now I think that the Democrats will probably hold on to this seat, but it is a little bit of consideration. Can the GOP have so much momentum this coming election season that they'll make the seat at least competitive, right? So you look at the past few elections in Vermont's Senate, or sorry, let me see here. It would have been. So Patrick Leahy in his last election in Vermont, he won against the Republican Scott Milne by a 61 to 33 margin. Before that, he won 64 to 31 basically. And before that, he won by almost a 71% majority. So his majorities were huge for many years, and there were guys who were going up against him and getting just destroyed. Here's a guy who got 43%. This was back when Vermont was much more of a centrist state. And you can see even in the 80s, there were years when Leahy was just, he was doing amazing. The closest election he ever faced was in 1980 with Reagan coming to power. And he won by the skin of his teeth by only about less than 2,000 votes. So that was a lifetime ago. We now have Vermont being distinctly farther to the left. But if the mood of the country is moving further and further away from the Democrats, there's no reason that the seat can at least not be competitive. So we'll see what happens with that. Hard to predict, especially when somebody with such a long career and deep connections is out there. There's a House member in Vermont, Peter Welch. Peter Welch. He's a Democratic House member. There's only one Democrat. There's only one congressman from Vermont in the House. So he's likely going to be the person who runs for the Senate seat, and it's definitely going to be a step up for him. But we'll see what happens. And I personally would like to see Vermont and many other states become more competitive. Another big, big move was made today. The Wyoming GOP says it won't recognize Liz Cheney as a Republican anymore. So this is from the Huffington Post. It says the Wyoming Republican Party voted to no longer recognize Representative Liz Cheney as a member of the GOP this weekend, a symbolic move that reflects ongoing frustration among conservatives who are still firmly allied with former President Donald Trump. The party passed the measure by a 31 to 29 vote on Saturday, the Casper Star Tribune reported. The move comes after about a third of Wyoming counties voted earlier this year to no longer recognize Cheney as a Republican. The state's GOP also voted in February to censure her over a vote to impeach Trump for his role in the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. To further her own personal political agenda, Representative Liz Cheney has not only caused massive disruption, distraction, and division within the House Republican Conference, but has also willingly, happily, and energetically joined forces with and proudly pledged allegiance to Democrat Speaker of the House Pelosi, the resolution reads. The measure adds that Cheney did so as a means of serving her own personal interests. Sorry, I don't know why this keeps popping up. While ignoring the interests, needs, and expectations of Wyoming Republicans. Cheney's spokesperson told the Associated Press that the idea she isn't a conservative Republican is, quote, laughable. She is bound by her faith in the Constitution, the spokesman Jeremy Adler told the publication. Sadly, a portion of the Wyoming GOP leadership has abandoned that fundamental principle and instead allowed themselves to be held hostage to the lies of a dangerous and irrational man. The Congresswoman is running for re-election next year and faces at least 4 Republican opponents, including attorney Harriet Hageman, whom Trump has endorsed. Hageman told the Casper Star Tribune that the Wyoming GOP's vote was fitting, saying Cheney had completely broken with where we are as a state. Cheney has drawn the ire of many in her party for her repeated criticism of Trump and her fellow Republicans' failure to hold him accountable for his role in the January 6th riot, which was intended to overturn his 2020 election loss. She was one of 10 House Republicans to vote to impeach the former president for his role in inciting the attack, and is one of just 2 Republicans in the House Select Committee investigating the Capitol riot. Earlier this month, Cheney said that Trump was at war with the rule of law and that those in Congress who failed to say so are complicit in his efforts. We will put duty to our oath above partisan politics, or will look away from the danger. Will we put duty to our oath above partisan politics, or will we look away from the danger and the threat, embrace the lies and enable the liar? The lawmakers said at an event in New Hampshire in early November. There is no gray area when it comes to that question. When it comes to this moment, there is no middle ground. So Cheney getting booted by her own party in her own home state, I think it's a sign that she is probably going to be, um, knocked out of the running for Wyoming state representative, um, or sorry, the Wyoming congressperson to the U.S. Congress. So we've already seen this is something that people are not really paying attention to, but you should. The people who are the Rhino GOP, okay, the people who are basically the old guard, the Bushites, the pro warmongering wing, they are losing gradually some power in the GOP, which is it's never going to be a great and effective party, but it can improve. Um, so they've been losing ground. So there's a few people who have already announced their retirements. There's Anthony Gonzalez, who's a congressman from here in Ohio, who also voted with Cheney to impeach Trump. He's already announced he's not going to run for re-election. And Adam Kinzinger of Illinois, I think I made a video about that, who has also withdrawn. And I believe Liz Cheney in the end is going to have a hard time staying in the race and maintaining the pretense that she can actually win the nomination, because Wyoming as a whole, the people are probably aware that Liz Cheney is now basically burning bridges with much of her own voter base in Wyoming. Many of these people were willing to overlook her horrendous record on defense and foreign policy and warmongering and support her because they're Republicans and they're like, oh, well, she's a Republican too. We may not agree. No, that was the wrong tack to take the whole time. They should have never allowed her to basically claim this seat because her father, Dick Cheney, former vice president, had once been a House of Representatives member from Wyoming. They basically let her walk into the seat as if she owned it. It was the wrong move then, and I think that they're correcting it. And let's hope that they nominate someone who I think will have a little bit more of an independent message. Not even just I think it would be wrong to invite somebody who's just a puppet of Donald Trump too. I think you need somebody who will look for for charting their own personal political agenda based on views that they hold to be um, deep in their own psyche, not simply because the rest of the party or the former president wants them to believe in them. And I don't think that Cheney was a good example. I think she's someone who was simply contrarian to Trump rather than just having a different vision. I think her vision is much closer to that of Democrats than it is to people who are conservative or libertarian. So that's about it. Hopefully later this week I'll have something to talk about regarding Ukraine, Russia, and Belarus and Poland. It's a four-way, um, it's a four-way conflict at the moment. Actually, so you do see that Poland and Ukraine are more on the side opposing Russia, and Belarus is of course supporting Russia and using this this migrant crisis in order to squeeze the Poles. But that's a little bit more of a complicated topic, and I'll try to both research and talk about it later this week. Have a great night, and here, Ziggy, come here. Come here. Say bye to the people. Ziggy, Ziggy, be nice. Ziggy, say bye, people. Bye, people. Ziggy, is that how they get you? Is that how they get you? All right. So have a good night. Subscribe to me on BitChute, on Rumble, Odyssey, uh, Telegram. That's right, Ziggy Telegram. Uh, subscribe to the newsletter, and also subscribe on Subscribestar. Throw me some money, and have a good night.